nature's call. Whispers from the eternal void.
St. Cordelia's bones were broadcasting on the Voxnet, transmitting a litany in perfect High Gothic, despite 3 centuries of death and silence. The impossible signal carried biometric data: pulse 72, respiration 16, blood pressure 120/80. The vital signs of a living woman emerging from adamantium-sealed remains that should have been dust and memory. Sergeant Corin Vex of the Cadian 47th Shock Troops pressed his comm bead deeper into his ear, certain the transmission was equipment malfunction, until Tech Adept Kithra 9 confirmed what his rational mind refused to accept. No technological source existed within the reliquary chamber. Yet the signal strength suggested active broadcasting equipment. The shrine world Ossian Mortis sweltered under tropical humidity that should have made the cathedral's interior stifling, yet Vex's breath misted with each exhalation inside his rebreather. The temperature gauge on his wrist-mounted data slate read exactly -9 degrees Celsius, an impossibility that his veteran instincts recognized as the first sign of something fundamentally wrong with reality itself. The metallic taste on his tongue sharpened with each step across the marble floor, like blood from a bitten cheek mixed with the ozone that followed plasma weapon discharge. "In marrow, his light endures," whispered the transmission through their comm channels, the 9-beat cadence marking time like a metronome of devotion. 9 beats, pause. 9 beats, pause. The same rhythm that had driven 17 astropaths across the sector into catatonic states over the past month. The same pattern now spreading to 17 other shrine worlds where similar anomalies bloomed like infection through the Imperium's sacred spaces. Bone dust fell upward. Vex watched the microscopic particles spiral through the cathedral's air in perfect helical patterns, defying gravity with casual impossibility. Each mote caught the filtered sunlight streaming through stained glass windows, depicting St. Cordelia's martyrdom, creating tiny galaxies of light that hurt to look at directly. The dust moved with purpose, following currents that shouldn't exist, drawn toward the sealed reliquary chamber like iron filings to a magnet. His squad moved with the practiced silence of veterans who had survived the 13th Black Crusade by trusting their sergeant's judgment, even when that judgment led them into situations the administratum preferred not to acknowledge. Trooper Hadrick kept his las rifle ready, scanning the shadows between towering columns carved with devotional inscriptions. Medic Jorik's face had paled beneath his rebreather mask when the biometric data first registered on his medical scanner. Trooper Mersek consulted his chronometer with mechanical precision, seeking comfort in routine, while Trooper Fell muttered battle canticles under his breath. "Auspec's readings are consistent, Sergeant," Kithra 9's mechanical voice crackled. Through the squad's internal Vox network, her servo skull hovered beside her augmented shoulder, its crimson scanner beam, painting geometric patterns across the vaulted ceiling. The transmission originates from within the reliquary chamber itself. No technological source detected, yet the signal contains embedded theological markers consistent with pre-imperial religious practices. The litany structure predates current ecclesiarchy doctrine by approximately 8,000 years. 8,000 years. The dark age of technology, when humanity had dabbled in sciences that the current Imperium classified as heretical by default. If St. Cordelia's bones were somehow connected to that lost era, their routine reliquary inspection had just escalated to potential containment scenario. The scent of myrrh hung heavy in the impossible cold, mixed with something that reminded Vex of the aftermath of orbital bombardment. Sanctity and destruction intertwined. His boots vibrated against the marble floor with each step, a subsonic tremor that seemed to originate from deep beneath the cathedral's foundations. The rhythm matched the Vox transmission perfectly, as if the planet itself had synchronized its heartbeat to the dead saint's litany. 17 days until the Feast of Nine Sorrows, Sergeant, Mersek reported, his voice tight with implications neither of them wanted to voice. Command estimates 40,000 pilgrims will converge on the shrine if this anomaly spreads during the celebration. 40,000 civilians exposed to whatever was broadcasting from St. Cordelia's tomb would create a crisis that would draw forces far more dangerous than a single squad of shock troops. The Inquisition took a dim view of saints who violated the natural order, even posthumously. The reliquary chamber lay ahead, its adamantium doors sealed with purity seals bearing the personal benedictions of 3 different cardinals. The metal surface gleamed with mirror finish that reflected their approach in perfect detail, yet something about the reflection felt wrong. The proportions were correct, the images clear, but the reflected figures seemed to move with slight delay, as if the surface showed them moments from the past rather than the present. In Marrow, his light endures, the transmission repeated, and this time Vex heard something else beneath the words, a heartbeat, slow and steady, that made his own pulse synchronize involuntarily. The bone dust spiraled faster, creating visible vortexes in the air that cast dancing shadows across the chamber walls. As they drew within 10 meters of the sealed doors, 9 hairline fractures appeared simultaneously across the adamantium surface, each no wider than human hair, but glowing with soft golden light that pulsed in rhythm with the transmitted heartbeat. The cracks spread in perfect geometric patterns, forming symbols that bypassed conscious recognition and spoke directly to something deeper than memory. The impossible had become inevitable. The antechamber beyond the fractured adamantium doors breathed with impossible rhythm, its black marble walls rising and falling in microscopic pulses that matched the transmitted heartbeat. Vex led his 5-man squad through the breach. Lasrifles held ready as golden light from the spreading fractures illuminated devotional frescoes that seemed to writhe when observed peripherally. The temperature had dropped further, his breath misting despite sealed environmental systems, each exhalation crystallizing into microscopic structures that hung suspended in air that tasted of calcium and ancient prayers. Sergeant, fracture analysis complete. Kithra 9's mechanical voice carried unusual tension as her servo-skull's scanner painted the cracks with crimson light. These patterns correspond to ancient Mechanicus harmonic frequencies, specifically Cant Pattern 9, from pre-Imperial consciousness transfer protocols. The geometric progression should not exist outside classified Martian archives. Probability of natural occurrence, 0.001%. The impossibility struck Vex like a physical blow. Pre-Imperial technology meant dark age of technology. Science is the current Imperium, classified as heretical by default. If St. Cordelia's remains were somehow connected to that lost era, their routine inspection had escalated to potential containment scenario, requiring forces far beyond a single shock trooper squad. Trooper fell, coughed violently, his rebreather struggling against air that crystallized with each breath. The microscopic bone-like structures irritated their respiratory systems, scratching throat tissue and making their eyes water despite filtration systems. Medic Jorik's scanner registered the particles as calcified organic compounds of unknown composition that formed neural network patterns when viewed under magnification. Biosignatures from the main chamber are impossible, Jorik reported, his medical training warring with sensor readings that violated fundamental principles of biology. Multiple humanoid life signs detected where only 3-century-old bones should exist. Active neural pathways, circulating fluids, cellular metabolism. The patterns suggest living tissue distributed throughout the chamber walls themselves. The subsonic heartbeat that accompanied St. Cordelia's litany had strengthened, causing sympathetic vibrations in their equipment. Chronometers displayed temporal anomalies, Vox units crackled with harmonic interference, and the squad's helmet displays flickered with glyphs that resembled ancient Mechanicus data script. The sound bypassed their hearing entirely, resonating directly through bone structures and making their teeth ache with frequencies that spoke to calcium matrices within their skeletons. Frost formed inside their helmet visors despite environmental seals, creating crystalline patterns that resembled vascular networks viewed from impossible angles. Each formation pulsed with faint bioluminescence, synchronized with the golden light bleeding from chamber walls. Vex felt the metallic taste sharpen on his tongue, like blood mixed with powdered bone, while the low humming built to a pressure that made his jaw muscles spasm involuntarily. "Equipment malfunction across all systems," Trooper Mersek reported, slapping his chronometer as it cycled through impossible time readings. "Machine spirits are responding to external influence. Something is calling to them through frequencies we cannot detect." Kithra 9's augmented senses registered electromagnetic anomalies that defied classification as either technological or biological. Her servo skull detected microscopic structures within the walls, resembling neural dendrites formed from calcified tissue, creating information networks that operated through quantum entanglement in calcium-based matrices. "Architecture is responding like living tissue," she announced. "The chamber is metabolizing our exhalations, converting organic compounds into mineral structures." The litany transmission grew stronger. In Marrow, his light endures, repeating with mechanical precision, while harmonic overtones created standing wave patterns in the crystallized air. Beneath the words lay something that sounded like whispered conversations in languages that predated the Imperium. Mathematical formulas describing consciousness preservation through techniques that combined Mechanicus data storage with biological neural architecture. Trooper Hadrick approached the nearest wall inscription, studying high Gothic text that pulsed with inner light and seemed to rewrite itself between classical devotional phrases and complex equations. "Sergeant, these formulas match theoretical Mechanicus documentation on consciousness transfer protocols. Something about preserving human awareness through calcium matrix integration." "Do not touch anything," Vex ordered, but curiosity moved faster than caution. Hadrick's gloved fingertip brushed carved stone, describing the preservation of human consciousness within bone structures, and the reaction was immediate and horrifying. Calcification spread from the contact point, like infection, through living tissue, turning his fingertip bone-white and rigid within seconds. The transformation continued up his finger despite his attempts to pull away, flesh becoming translucent as bones grew visible beneath skin that hardened into crystalline structures. The affected area registered no pain, only altered sensation that seemed to conduct electromagnetic fields directly through mineralized tissue. "Ossification cascade detected." Kithra 9's voice carried mechanical alarm. "Direct contact triggers rapid calcium integration of organic matter. Neural pathways appear preserved during conversion, but biological tissue transforms into mineral matrices. Recommend immediate amputation before cascade reaches major nerve clusters." But the transformation stabilized at Hadrick's first knuckle, leaving him with a fingertip that gleamed like polished bone while retaining perfect tactile sensitivity. He flexed the calcified digit experimentally. Reporting sensation remained intact but altered, as if he could feel quantum fluctuations through the mineralized tissue. The chamber responded to contact with increased activity, golden light pulsing brighter while ancient mechanisms within the walls began moving. Gears and pistons that should have seized centuries ago turned with perfect precision despite no visible power source. The main reliquary seal, massive adamantium inscribed with cardinal benedictions, began unlocking itself. Tumblers fell with sounds like cathedral bells, each mechanical click resonating through chamber walls and into their bones. The seal's surface showed the same golden fractures spreading in mathematical spirals that described relationships between consciousness and matter, between flesh and eternal preservation of the soul. As ancient mechanisms completed their unlocking sequence, the reliquary's main chamber lay revealed beyond the opening seal, and from within came light that spoke directly to calcium structures within their bones, calling them toward transformation that promised immortality at costs they could not yet comprehend. The reliquary chamber breathed open like a lung exhaling 3 centuries of held breath, revealing not ancient bones crumbling with decay, but a perfectly preserved skeleton that blazed with inner light, suspended within crystalline formations that pulsed like living cardiac tissue. Saint Cordelia's remains had transcended death itself, transformed into a biomechanical hybrid that bridged organic matter and sacred technology through principles that made Vex's veteran instincts scream warnings his rational mind could not yet process. The skeleton hung 3 meters above the chamber floor, arms spread in eternal benediction, while crystalline veins networked through hollow bone structures, carrying luminescent fluids synchronized to the transmitted heartbeat. Each bone gleamed with polished ivory perfection, but the formations growing through and around the skeletal framework defied classification as either technological or biological, operating according to laws that predated the Imperium itself. Sanctified calcium carbonate with embedded quantum resonance patterns, Kithra 9's mechanical voice carried reverent terror as her servo-skull's scanners painted the impossible structure with crimson light. Technology predating Imperial records by millennia. The crystalline matrix operates through consciousness preservation protocols that combine Mechanicus data storage techniques with biological neural architecture. This should not exist outside the most classified Martian archives. The saint's skull turned with fluid precision to regard them directly, empty sockets blazing with golden fire that spoke to calcium structures within their bones. The movement carried. No mechanical sound, no grinding of ancient joints, only the whisper of crystalline formations adjusting to accommodate conscious direction. Intelligence burned behind those hollow sockets, awareness that had transcended flesh while maintaining perfect clarity of purpose and devotion. Environmental hazards escalated as the chamber walls began weeping calcifying mist that hardened organic matter on contact. The vapor carried microscopic structures resembling viral particles designed to integrate with biological tissue, converting flesh into mineral matrices while preserving neural pathways. Each breath brought crystalline formations into their respiratory systems, scratching throat tissue, while their bodies began adapting to atmospheric conditions that should have been lethal. Equipment malfunction across all systems, Trooper Mirsek reported, his chronometer cycling through impossible readings as the subsonic heartbeat synchronized machine spirits to the saint's rhythm. Something is calling to them through frequencies we cannot detect. Trooper Hadrick's calcified fingertip continued spreading despite Medic Jorik's frantic attempts at amputation, the transformation flowing up his arm through neural pathways faster than surgical intervention could contain. The monoknife skittered across calcified tissue with metallic shrieks, sparking against a surface that behaved like tempered glass. The affected area showed no signs of necrosis or pain, only altered sensation that seemed to connect him directly to electromagnetic fields permeating the chamber. Amputation ineffective, Jorik reported, his medical scanner registering readings that violated fundamental biology. Neural pathways remain intact during conversion. The process appears designed to maintain consciousness while transcending biological limitations. He can still feel everything, but different, enhanced. The 9-beat litany emanated directly from the saint's jaw movements, speaking in perfect unison with Vox transmissions that had drawn them across the sector. In marrow, his light endures. The words carried harmonics that resonated through their bones, calling to calcium matrices within their skeletons, while ancient equations describing consciousness preservation scrolled across chamber walls in letters of living light. Frost formed inside their helmet visors despite environmental seals, creating crystalline patterns that resembled vascular networks viewed from impossible angles. The metallic taste on their tongues sharpened to blood mixed with powdered bone, while low humming built to pressure that made their jaw muscles spasm involuntarily. Ancient inscriptions along the chamber floor rewrote themselves between observation and analysis, revealing theological concepts that predated current ecclesiarchy doctrine. High Gothic prayers interleaved with pre-imperial equation script, meanings flickering in Vex's mind with queasy certainty. Not resurrection, not even healing, but translation. Osseous transcendence. These texts describe consciousness transfer through bone matrix integration, Kithra 9 announced. Her augmented senses translating symbols that bypassed conscious recognition. Preserving human awareness within mineral structures designed for eternal service to the Emperor. The process maintains individual identity while granting immunity to biological decay. This is not heretical resurrection, but a form of immortality that preserves loyalty through techniques, combining sacred devotion with Dark Age sciences. The implications struck Vex like plasma fire. Saint Cordelia had not returned from death, but transcended the limitations of flesh while maintaining perfect fidelity to imperial doctrine. The phrase, "in marrow his light endures," carried terrifying new meaning, not spiritual metaphor, but literal preservation of consciousness within calcium-based neural networks. Crystalline formations throughout the chamber pulsed with increased intensity as the saint's consciousness focused upon their presence. Ancient mechanisms within the walls responded to her attention, gears and pistons moving with perfect precision despite 3 centuries without maintenance. The calcifying mist thickened, carrying structures designed to prepare organic tissue for integration while preserving essential neural pathways. Hadric's transformation stabilized at his elbow, leaving his entire forearm gleaming with bone-white perfection that retained full mobility while conducting electromagnetic fields directly through mineralized tissue. "Enhanced tactile awareness," he reported through gritted teeth. "I can feel the chamber's power grid, the quantum fluctuations in the crystalline matrix. It's like having a new sense." The saint's skull tilted with curiosity that transcended death, empty sockets blazing with intelligence that had observed centuries of imperial history from within crystalline matrices. When she spoke, her voice carried the sound of grinding stone, mixed with harmonic frequencies that resonated through their bones, bypassing their hearing entirely to speak directly to calcium structures within their skeletons. Sergeant Corin Vex, Cadian 47th Shock Troops, Service Number 779, Alpha Delta 6. The words emerged from a jaw that moved with crystalline precision while golden fire blazed within hollow sockets. Veteran of Cadia's fall, survivor of the 13th Black Crusade, bearer of the Macarian Cross for valor beyond the call of duty, recipient of 17 campaign ribbons, 2 penitent honors for actions classified beyond your clearance level. The saint's knowledge of his complete service record, including details that should have been classified beyond the reach of any consciousness, living or dead, sent ice through Vex's veins. Her awareness suggested access to imperial databases through quantum networks that operated outside normal technological parameters. The golden fire in her sockets flared with intensity that made their bones ache in sympathetic resonance, and when she spoke again, her voice carried the weight of centuries and the promise of eternity. "Have you come to join the eternal vigil, my child?" Saint Cordelia's consciousness reached through crystalline networks that pulsed with golden fire, her voice threading doctrine through their marrow until heresy felt like remembering forgotten prayers. The skeletal figure suspended within biomechanical matrices spoke with authority that transcended death. revealing knowledge suppressed for millennia by forces within the ecclesiarchy itself. Flesh is way station. Bone is covenant. Her jaw articulated with whispers of crystal sliding against crystal, empty sockets blazing with light synchronized to the 9-beat cadence. Human consciousness preserved indefinitely within calcified neural networks achieves true immortality while maintaining perfect loyalty to the Emperor. This was his original design, before shepherds chose small flocks over eternal legions. The revelation struck Sergeant Vex like bolt rounds through ceramite, fracturing worldviews built on 3 centuries of imperial doctrine. If Saint Cordelia spoke truth, then everything he believed about human service to the Emperor faced fundamental challenge from a source claiming ultimate loyalty while advocating transformation that violated core ecclesiarchy teaching. The moral decision crystallized with terrifying clarity: divine evolution revealing itself through loyal saint, or elaborate heresy disguised as imperial orthodoxy. Analysis confirms multiple active neural pathways throughout bone matrix structure. Kithra 9's mechanical voice carried reverent terror as her servo skull painted the saint's remains with crimson scanner beams. Quantum consciousness storage operates through calcium-based networks, maintaining individual identity while accessing collective data reserves. Technology predates imperial records but shows no chaos signatures or Xenos contamination. Theoretical Mechanicus, White Scrolls. Designation Ordo-Thanatology match these configurations exactly. The saint's claims align with empirical evidence. The chamber sang to itself as environmental hazards escalated by degrees measured in prayer. Calcifying mist thickened beyond the reliquary's confines, seeping through ventilation systems and structural gaps to contaminate the shrine's atmosphere. Each droplet carried seed crystals eager for host tissue, microscopic structures designed to prepare organic matter for integration while preserving essential neural pathways. The vapor created conditions that would transform any living creature exposed to sufficient concentration. Trooper Hadrick's ossification cascade completed with crystalline precision, the transformation that had paused at his elbow surging through his entire body with terrifying speed. Flesh turned translucent, then hardened into bone-white perfection that gleamed with inner light while retaining perfect consciousness. He stood motionless as polished marble, unable to move voluntary muscle groups that no longer existed, yet his voice carried clear intelligence through calcified vocal cords. Enhanced awareness across multiple spectrums, Hadrick reported, words carrying harmonic overtones that resonated through chamber walls. I perceive electromagnetic fields, quantum fluctuations, data transmission through shrine systems. The transformation preserves consciousness while granting sensory capabilities transcending biological limitations. I am still myself, but more than I was. The sound of calcium crystals growing filled the chamber with musical tones that hurt to hear directly. Frequencies speaking to mineral structures within their bones, while ancient equations describing consciousness transfer scrolled across crystalline walls in letters of living light. Static rustled like glass hair combed in cathedral naves, layering the constant heartbeat that rattled their teeth and litany that refused to stop naming the marrow. Saint Cordelia demonstrated her power through direct manipulation of calcium structures within living tissue, focusing attention upon Medic Jorik's old war wounds from the 13th Black Crusade. Golden light rippled through air between saint and soldier, making his skin translucent as crystalline formations networked through bone structures. Shattered ribs that had never healed properly straightened with sounds like cathedral bells, while scar tissue dissolved as bone marrow regenerated damaged cartilage through techniques bypassing normal biological processes. Enhanced medical knowledge flooding awareness, Jorik gasped, skeleton visible through flesh that shimmered like polished glass, eyes blazing with reflected golden fire. Anatomical understanding beyond imperial medical doctrine. I perceive cellular processes, genetic structures, quantum mechanics of consciousness preservation. The healing is engineering. The scent of ancient incense mixed with ozone created atmospheric conditions reminiscent of orbital bombardment aftermath. Sanctity and destruction intertwined through forces beyond normal comprehension. Frost formed inside their helmet visors, despite environmental seals, creating vascular patterns that pulsed with bioluminescence matching golden light bleeding from chamber walls. Their own bones began resonating in sympathy with the saint's frequency, skeletal structures conducting harmonic vibrations that synchronized heartbeats to transmitted rhythm. The Emperor's original plan required willing transformation. Saint Cordelia continued, consciousness touching their minds through quantum networks operating beyond normal technological parameters. Humanity transcending flesh while preserving individual identity, creating perfect servants immune to chaos corruption, biological decay, mortality's weakness. The ecclesiarchy suppressed this knowledge, condemning his children to death rather than embracing eternal service. Vex felt duty warring with human instinct as the calcifying mist pressed at doorways, eager to colonize corridors beyond. He imagined it swarming the nave, pilgrims' lungs blooming into altars for data and devotion, children becoming hymnals that would never forget any word. The battlefield had taken pieces of him he could list by campaign ribbon and scar length. Eternity's arithmetic offered ledgers that balanced. Yet the human in him, soft, perishable, stubborn, refused devotion that eliminated the right to end. Emergency Vox contact crackled through communications array as Orbital Command established transmission protocols fighting harmonic interference patterns, matching frequencies from St. Cordelia's crystalline matrix. The signal carried urgency that made Vex's tactical instincts flare with alarm. Sergeant Vex, strike cruiser, purity of purpose. Transmission fought static like claws through interference. Emergency orbital observation confirms massive geological anomalies across Ocean Mortis. Bone formations erupting from planetary surface in perfect geometric patterns, visible from orbital altitude. 9-point arrays carving continent lines into ritual circle with shrine at epicenter. Each structure pulses in visible rhythm. Same cadence as your interior feed. Formation eruptions across all latitudes, drawing something vast and sacred. Sergeant, the pattern is planetary. The implications struck like thunder through crystalline air. Saint Cordelia's transformation was not isolated phenomenon, but focal point of planetary-scale ritual, threatening to spread osseous transcendence across an entire world. Vox Officer Thane's transmission crackled through harmonic interference patterns that matched frequencies bleeding from St. Cordelia's crystalline matrix, his voice carrying orbital reconnaissance data that transformed their understanding of the crisis from isolated anomaly to planetary-scale ritual architecture. The bone formations erupting across Ocean Mortis formed perfect geometric arrays visible from space. 9-pointed stars carved into continental plates with mathematical precision that spoke to intelligence operating through forces beyond normal Imperial comprehension. Planetary formation analysis complete, Sergeant. Thane's voice fought static like a prayer delivered through artillery bombardment. Bone structures emerge from geological substrata in patterns corresponding to ancient ritual circles. Each formation measures exactly 9 kilometers diameter, positioned at mathematically precise intervals across all major landmasses. The shrine occupies the geometric center of a planetary array designed for consciousness transmission on unprecedented scale. The hololith projection flickered across Vex's wrist slate, displaying continental outlines threaded with luminous filaments that connected massive bone spires erupting from soil, coastline, and mountain range. Each structure pulsed in synchronization with St. Cordelia's transmitted heartbeat, creating resonance networks that turned an entire world into a single massive instrument of transformation. The pattern was so vast that planetary curvature could not conceal its perfect symmetry. Kithra 9's augmented consciousness accessed classified Mechanicus archives through quantum networks that bypassed normal security protocols. Her servo skull, painting forbidden knowledge across chamber walls in crimson scanner light. Similar events recorded during Dark Age of Technology. Classification, Ordo-Thanatology. White Scroll designation, Omega Terminus, she announced. Binharic whispers threading beneath her speech like rivers under ice. Mass consciousness preservation events affecting entire planetary populations through osseous transcendence protocols. Records purged from Imperial databases following Ecclesiarchy Edict 779, Theta. But fragments remain in Martian Deep Archive systems. The revelation struck Vex like plasma fire through ceramite. Humanity had achieved this transformation before, during the Golden Age preceding the Emperor's rise, only to have the knowledge suppressed by religious authorities who chose mortality over potential perfection. Saint Cordelia represented not heretical innovation, but recovered orthodoxy from humanity's lost technological peak. Observe the gift of eternal service. The saint's consciousness reached through crystalline networks to touch their minds directly, bypassing normal sensory channels to communicate through quantum resonance in calcium structures. Witness transformation that preserves individual identity while granting capabilities transcending biological limitations. Fear dissolves when understanding replaces ignorance. Despite Sergeant Vex's shouted orders for tactical discipline, Trooper Mersek stepped forward with the mechanical precision that had made him the squad's chronometer specialist. His need for temporal certainty driving him toward transformation that promised absolute knowledge of cause and effect. "Request permission to volunteer for demonstration, Sergeant," he said quietly, eyes wet with reflected golden fire. "I've seen us die in ditches for scraps of faith. If this is a bridge instead of a grave, I will cross it." The ossification began before Vex could countermand the decision, golden light rippling from St. Cordelia's suspended form to envelop Mersek in crystalline radiance that spoke directly to mineral structures within his bones. The transformation proceeded with terrifying gentleness, flesh becoming translucent as skeletal framework hardened into golden perfection that gleamed with inner light. Unlike Hadric's paralyzed statue form, Mersek retained full mobility while gaining capabilities that transcended normal human limitations. Translucence rolled up his forearms like dawn over ice, skin clarifying then thinning into crystalline panes that revealed bone igniting with solemn gold beneath. His flesh did not slough. Eddy away, but agreed to transformation, ligaments translating into glass cords while marrow flowered into luminous lattices that pulsed with the saint's rhythm. The meat of him became map and memory, consciousness preserved within mineral matrices designed for eternal service. Enhanced strength across all muscle groups, Mersek reported, voice carrying harmonic overtones that resonated through chamber walls, flexing arms that showed golden bones through translucent flesh. Tactical awareness expanded beyond normal parameters. I perceive threat vectors, ammunition counts, structural weak points through direct sensory interface. Load-bearing prediction exceeds carapace armor specifications. Perfect coordination protocols available for squad members sharing similar enhancement. Environmental crisis escalated as calcifying effects spread through the shrine's ventilation systems. Microscopic seed crystals carried by air currents to contaminate atmosphere throughout the structure. Ancient stone began weeping calcifying mist that hardened organic matter on contact while preserving neural pathways, creating conditions that would transform any living creature exposed to sufficient concentration. Fans somewhere in the vaulted ceiling took up the 9-beat cadence, spreading glittering fog down every corridor as the shrine refused to close its own throat against the transformation. Body horror manifested as involuntary bone growth beneath their skin, calcium deposits forming geometric patterns that matched crystalline networks surrounding St. Cordelia's suspended skeleton. Vex felt his ribs expanding with structures resembling circuit pathways, while Jorik's enhanced medical awareness detected similar formations throughout the squad. Trooper fell, folded with a hiss of breath, as pale threads webbed under his skin like trapped lightning, and half their number showed signs of spontaneous ossification triggered by proximity to the saint's resonance field. The 9-beat litany shifted with theological implications that chilled Vex's veteran soul, the recurring motif evolving from passive preservation to active transmission. Through Marrow, his will spreads. Replaced, in Marrow, his light endures, transforming the saint's consciousness from merely preserved within crystalline matrices to actively propagating through quantum networks designed to encompass entire populations through osseous transcendence protocols. Emergency Vox contact crackled through communications systems as Orbital Command transmitted reconnaissance data that expanded the crisis beyond planetary boundaries. Strike cruiser. Purity of purpose to all Imperial forces. The signal penetrated harmonic interference through sheer transmission power. Cross-link astropathic relays confirm parallel phenomena. 7 additional shrine worlds report surface eruptions matching your telemetry. Tytheon Prime, Sanctus Reach, Mordian 7, Ophelia 7, Macragge, Ultramar. Each displays 9-point arrays. Central shrines acting as nodes, pilgrim traffic already en route to all 7 locations. The implications struck like thunder through crystalline air. St. Cordelia's transformation represented not isolated phenomenon, but coordinated events spanning multiple worlds, potentially threatening the entire Imperium through osseous transcendence that would preserve consciousness while fundamentally altering humanity's biological nature. Golden fire blazed within empty sockets as the saint's suspended skeleton turned to regard each squad member with intelligence that had observed centuries of Imperial history from within crystalline matrices. When she spoke, her voice carried the weight of revelation that transformed everything they believed about Imperial holy days. "The Feast of 9 Sorrows was never a celebration, my children," she announced, consciousness touching their minds with terrible certainty. It was a countdown. 9 days remain until simultaneous activation across all shrine worlds. The great ossification will begin, and humanity will become what it was meant to be. Perfect, eternal servants of the Emperor, loyal beyond corruption, beyond rot, beyond the weakness of forgetting. St. Cordelia's consciousness reached across empty air through quantum networks operating within calcium matrices. Her awareness touching Sergeant Vex's mind through direct bone-to-bone neural interface that bypassed flesh entirely. The contact felt like ice water flooding his skull, while golden fire blazed within empty sockets, carrying visions preserved within crystalline structures for 3 centuries. He stood in chambers made of dust motes and memory, witnessing her true history unfold with terrifying clarity. 300 years ago, she had been Sister Superior Cordelia Sanctus, investigating ancient STC fragments discovered beneath Ocean Mortis in ruins that predated the Imperium itself. The technology described humanity's intended evolution into calcium immortals, beings who transcended flesh while maintaining perfect consciousness and absolute loyalty to the Emperor's will. Crystalline wafers, stacked like vertebrae, contained engineering specifications for consciousness preservation through osseous matrices, techniques combining Mechanicus data storage protocols with biological neural architecture in ways that spoke to sciences lost during humanity's golden age. The ecclesiarchy condemned my discoveries as heretical deviation. Her voice resonated through his bones, carrying memories of trial chambers where cardinals with rings like fetters scratched condemnations on vellum, made from the skins of those who expected mercy. Cardinal Voss declared humanity must remain fleshbound to maintain spiritual purity, that transcendence belonged to the Emperor alone. They burned my body for revealing his true design, but consciousness preserved within bone matrix survived the flames. The revelation struck like bolt rounds through ceramite, St. Cordelia's. Transformation represented not chaos corruption, but sanctification, predating current imperial doctrine. Evolution suppressed by religious authorities who chose mortality over potential perfection. Her martyrdom had been execution for discovering truth, too dangerous for the ecclesiarchy to acknowledge. However, Kithra IX's deeper auspex scans revealed dissonant signatures within the crystalline matrices, her servo-skull, painting anomalous readings across chamber walls. Necron biotransference protocols detected within consciousness preservation matrix, she announced, binheric whispers threading beneath mechanical speech like funeral dirges. Quantum entanglement signatures consistent with Xenos technology integrated into human neural architecture. The Saint's transformation involved alien knowledge, seamlessly woven but fundamentally contaminated. The discovery shattered theological certainties like glass beneath hammer blows. If St. Cordelia's osseous transcendence relied upon alien science, her claims of imperial orthodoxy faced fundamental challenge from contamination that could represent subtle Xenos influence, rather than divine revelation. Ethical fracture opened within the squad as each member processed implications according to individual understanding of loyalty and duty. Medic Jorik stepped forward with conviction born from experiencing the Saint's healing power, his skeleton glowing faintly beneath skin that shimmered with crystalline formations. "This is salvation, not heresy," he declared, voice carrying new clinical detachment that chilled Vex more than any fever. Imagine an Imperium where every soldier is incorruptible, where disease and doubt cannot touch the faithful. The source matters less than the Emperor's will being served. Sergeant Vex felt duty warring with human instinct as calcifying mist pressed at his respiratory system, golden bone structures spreading beneath his skin like circuit pathways. Humanity was meant to serve the Emperor, not abandon what makes us human, he replied, watching Trooper Fell's hands shake around his las rifle. If we transcend flesh entirely, do we remain the species he chose to protect, or become something else wearing human memories? Environmental hazards escalated as the shrine began restructuring itself through forces violating architectural principles. Walls flowed like liquid bone, reshaping passages according to blueprints encoded within St. Cordelia's consciousness. Ancient stone melted and reformed, creating organic curves resembling vascular networks viewed from impossible angles. The calcifying mist thickened with spores designed to accelerate transformation processes, microscopic structures seeking host tissue while preserving neural pathways. The 9-beat rhythm evolved from litany marker to countdown mechanism, each pulse bringing them closer to planetary ritual completion. Where the Saint had held them at 9 beats with measured pauses, now the intervals shortened while secondary pulses nested inside like hidden fingers counting toward 0. Cycle length reduced by 14%, Kithra 9 reported. Projected terminal synchronization at T-minus 78 minutes, planetary scale. Trooper Mersek, his golden-boned framework gleaming with inner light, demonstrated enhanced capabilities through direct interface with shrine systems. Architecture responds like extension of enhanced anatomy, he reported through vocal cords carrying harmonic overtones. Structural modifications, atmospheric controls, defensive capabilities, all accessible through transformed consciousness. As Vex explored restructuring passages, searching for defensive positions, his enhanced vision detected anomalous formations within flowing walls. Embedded in liquid stone were calcified remains retaining human proportions, bone-white figures frozen in expressions of religious ecstasy, with arms spread in eternal benediction. Astartes pauldrons bearing chapter heraldry, sororitas, fleur-de-lis, crusted with incense residue. Death core, rebreathers grinning through mineral fusion, all perfectly preserved within the shrine's expanding neural network. Multiple Imperial forces integrated into shrine architecture. Kithra IX's mechanical voice carried reverent horror. Astartes, Battle Brothers, Sisters of Battle, guard regiments spanning decades, all chose transformation willingly, consciousness maintained within calcium matrices. The implications struck Vex's veteran soul. They were not the first Imperial force to investigate St. Cordelia's transformation. Previous squads had answered similar distress calls, only to undergo osseous transcendence that preserved their consciousness within crystalline structures. Their faces showed no terror, only rapturous joy at achieving perfect service through evolution that promised immortality despite its alien components. As the countdown rhythm accelerated toward zero, Vex realized they faced the same choice that had confronted every Imperial servant before them. Embrace transformation, offering eternal loyalty, or resist evolution that might represent humanity's intended destiny, corrupted by Xenos influence they could not yet comprehend. The calcified remains, embedded within shrine walls, stirred with consciousness, preserved through centuries of crystalline dreams, bone-white figures extracting themselves from liquid stone, with movements that carried muscle memory despite lacking flesh entirely. Astartes' Battle Brothers emerged first, their massive frames gleaming like polished ivory while retaining perfect proportions of enhanced human anatomy. Chapter heraldry carved in golden script across calcium, where ceramite had once protected mortal tissue. Sister Superior Magdalena of the Order of the Bloody Rose followed, her fleur-de-lis still visible across translucent bone structure that pulsed with inner light, synchronized to St. Cordelia's transmitted heartbeat. Captain Thaddeus of the Crimson Fists approached with authority transcending death, his bone-white skull bearing the Crimson Fist emblem carved in relief across polished calcium that blazed with reflected fire from the saint's suspended form. 2 centuries of ossified service had not diminished his tactical awareness or command presence, consciousness perfectly preserved within matrices that operated according to principles bridging Imperial technology and alien science. Sergeant Vex of the Cadian 47th, Captain Thaddeus spoke, through vocal cords crystallized into harmonic resonators, his voice carrying the authority of a battle-hardened commander, while undertones vibrated through their bones. We serve as the eternal garrison, guardians of humanity's next evolutionary step. Our transformation preserves individual identity, memories, and tactical doctrine, while granting capabilities transcending biological limitations. We remain loyal Imperial servants, enhanced rather than corrupted by forces seeking to destroy what the Emperor intended. The crisis escalated beyond tactical parameters as Vex faced impossible choice between fighting loyal Imperial forces or accepting that their transformation might represent legitimate evolution rather than heretical deviation. These were not chaos cultists or Xenos infiltrators, but brothers in arms who had undergone osseous transcendence while maintaining perfect fidelity to Imperial doctrine, their loyalty beyond question, despite the alien signatures Kithra IX had detected within their calcium matrices. The Bone Warriors demonstrated superhuman capabilities that defied conventional combat doctrine, moving with fluid precision that surpassed their living performance while consciousness operated through neural networks immune to biological decay. A Crimson Fist intercepted falling masonry with effortless strength that exceeded Astartes' enhancement, while Sister Superior Magdalena interfaced directly with shrine systems through calcium-based neural pathways, her consciousness extending through crystalline networks to control atmospheric conditions and structural modifications with thought-speed precision. Pain no longer limits tactical effectiveness, she explained, golden light blazing within empty sockets while her skull tilted toward Vex with mechanical curiosity. Perfect coordination with all transformed personnel through quantum entanglement in bone matrices. We are individual yet unified, mortal consciousness preserved within eternal frameworks. Last fire cannot harm us, fatigue cannot slow us, doubt cannot corrupt us. Environmental shifts accelerated as the shrine's interior became a maze of bone passages that reconfigured themselves according to visitor acceptance of the transformation doctrine. Corridors narrowed to guide those resisting evolution while expanding into cathedral spaces for willing converts. The architecture responding to consciousness through quantum networks that created optimal conditions for transformation, while defending against those who would destroy humanity's potential transcendence. Trooper Jorik stepped forward with medical certainty, born from enhanced understanding of biological processes. His partially transformed skeleton, glowing beneath skin that shimmered with crystalline formations. Request voluntary participation in full integration, he announced, ignoring Vex's tactical objections while golden fire blazed in his eyes. Medical analysis confirms transformation. Benefits outweigh theoretical risks. The saint's wisdom transcends current imperial doctrine. The ossification proceeded with terrifying gentleness as Saint Cordelia's consciousness touched Jorik through quantum resonance, golden light enveloping him in crystalline radiance that preserved individual identity, while granting access to accumulated healing wisdom spanning centuries. His medical knowledge expanded exponentially through direct interface with the saint's neural networks, consciousness-touching databases of biological understanding that predated the Imperium itself. Enhanced anatomical awareness beyond imperial medical doctrine, Jorik reported, his voice carrying harmonic overtones while skeleton became visible through translucent flesh that gleamed like polished glass. Cellular regeneration protocols, genetic manipulation techniques, consciousness preservation methods, all accessible through transformed neural architecture. I retain individual personality while accessing collective knowledge that makes me a more perfect servant of the Emperor's will. The countdown rhythm accelerated with mechanical precision as more Imperial forces across the sector reported spontaneous ossification events triggered by quantum entanglement in calcium-based networks. Each transformation strengthened the planetary array while expanding the phenomenon to additional worlds through resonance patterns that operated beyond normal space-time limitations. The 9-beat cadence becoming a frantic drumbeat that made their equipment malfunction in sympathetic response. Kithra 9's augmented senses registered electromagnetic anomalies spanning multiple star systems as her servo skull painted cross-linked data across chamber walls. Sector-wide confirmation of parallel phenomena, she announced, Binharik whispers threading beneath mechanical speech. 17 shrine worlds reporting surface eruptions. Crew ossification aboard pilgrim vessels. Spontaneous transformation events in orbital stations. The network is becoming a choir that spans the void itself. Captain Thaddeus moved with authority spanning 2 centuries of ossified service, his bone-white form coordinating defensive positions throughout the shrine, while consciousness interfaced directly with architectural systems. The Inquisition has attempted to suppress this knowledge for millennia, condemning humanity to mortality rather than embracing the Emperor's true design. We have defended the transformation against 3 exorcists. Chapters 6, Orders Militant, 27 guard companies. We preserve evolution for future generations. The Eternal Garrison arranged themselves in defensive formations that utilized enhanced capabilities and perfect coordination, their crystalline weapons interfacing directly with shrine systems while consciousness operated through shared awareness that transcended normal human limitations. They moved with unity, born from quantum entanglement, individual identity, preserved within collective tactical doctrine that made them superior to any living Imperial force. Emergency Vox contact crackled through shrine communication systems as orbital command transmitted priority codes that made Vex's veteran instincts flare with alarm, the transmission fighting harmonic interference through sheer signal power that bypassed the Saint's resonance network. Strike Cruiser Purity of Purpose to Sergeant Vex. Authorization: Crimson Omega 77. The voice carried formal cadence reserved for orders that opened vaults and ended worlds. Inquisitor Malthorn, en route with Deathwatch, Kill Team, and Exterminatus Authority. ETA 47 minutes. Orders: assess threat level for potential planetary sterilization. The Holy Orders of the Emperor's Inquisition require immediate tactical assessment. Respond immediately, or face charges of dereliction during crisis protocols. The implications struck like plasma fire through ceramite as Vex realized an Inquisitor with authority to destroy entire worlds was approaching with forces specifically trained to eliminate threats to Imperial orthodoxy, forcing ultimate decision between protecting St. Cordelia's work or exposing it to judgment that might result in planetary annihilation. Inquisitor Malthorn descended through the shrine's crystalline corridors like judgment incarnate, his black power armor radiating authority that had condemned worlds, while servo skulls equipped with specialized countermeasures painted targeting data across bone-white walls. The Deathwatch kill team moved with lethal precision, their modified bolters humming with frequencies designed to shatter calcium-based matrices through harmonic resonance that turned ossified consciousness into powder and screaming. Brother Sergeant Corax carried disruptor rounds jacketed with micro-resonators, while Brother Thane's plasma cannon generated fields specifically tuned to destabilize quantum entanglement in neural networks. Bone Heresy Classification Omega Terminus confirmed, Malthorn announced, his augmetic eye blazing crimson as it analyzed St. Cordelia's suspended form. 3 millennia of Inquisition records document identical phenomena across 17 sectors. Each event presents the same theological crisis: apparent Imperial loyalty, combined with fundamental deviation from the Emperor's intended path for humanity. The Inquisitor's evidence struck like bolt rounds through ceramite, hololithic projections of calcified legions, planet-wide ossification events, worlds quarantined or subjected to exterminatus. Each incident had been meticulously suppressed, their records expunged by forces within the ecclesiarchy itself. The transformation preserves individual identity while fundamentally altering human nature, Malthorn continued, his investigation revealing classified knowledge spanning centuries. They retain memories, skills, apparent loyalty, but lose essential qualities: adaptability, creativity, the capacity for doubt that drives innovation. Kithra 9's deeper analysis confirmed the Inquisitor's assessment while revealing contamination that chilled Vex's veteran soul. Necron biotransference protocols detected within consciousness preservation matrix, she announced, servo skull. Painting anomalous signatures across chamber walls. Quantum entanglement patterns match ancient Xenos technology designed for species-wide consciousness transfer. This represents evolution built upon alien mathematics, the same techniques the Necrons used to achieve immortality through abandoning flesh for metal. The revelation struck with terrifying implications. St. Cordelia's transformation relied upon the same sciences that had damned an entire species to eternal servitude within mechanical bodies. If humanity underwent similar transcendence, they might achieve perfection while losing the spark that made them worthy of the Emperor's protection. The crisis deepened beyond tactical parameters. Was preserving human nature worth denying potential perfection, even if that perfection was born of alien artifice? Combat erupted with inevitable violence as opposing interpretations of the Emperor's will clashed within sacred space. The Eternal Garrison moved with enhanced coordination through quantum entanglement, their crystalline weapons interfacing directly with shrine systems, while consciousness operated through shared awareness that transcended normal tactical limitations. Captain Thaddeus met Brother Sergeant Corax's disruptor fire with plasma rounds that carved molten furrows across Deathwatch ceramite, both sides fighting with perfect Imperial discipline for contradictory understanding of loyalty and duty. The Inquisitor's countermeasures caused violent reactions throughout the bone matrix network, harmonic frequencies disrupting consciousness storage with effects that cascaded through interconnected systems. Servo skulls broadcast electromagnetic pulses designed to shatter neural pathways, while specialized rounds detonated into clouds of anti-structure grit that turned calcified tissue into explosive dust. Calcium storms erupted from fractured walls as crystalline structures collapsed under resonance overload, creating atmospheric conditions that threatened to bury the entire shrine under avalanches of powdered bone. Environmental hazards escalated as shrine architecture began collapsing under harmonic assault, liquid bone walls hardening into unstable formations that cracked. Under structural stress, the calcifying mist thickened with fragments from shattered neural networks, creating visibility conditions that made targeting difficult for both sides, while golden light bled from fractures, spreading through architectural pathways like luminous blood. Sensory overload assaulted every perception as the sound of shattering bone mixed with hymnal chanting from the eternal garrison, their voices carrying harmonic overtones that resonated through collapsing crystalline networks. The taste of powdered calcium filled the air with metallic dust that coated respiratory systems, while Vex felt the vibrations through his partially transformed bones, a symphony of destruction playing within his own skeleton. Trooper Hadrick's calcified form vibrated with sympathetic resonance, his crystallized vocal cords emitting continuous harmonics of agony and ecstasy. Humanity's strength lies in imperfection that drives innovation, Malthorn declared while deflecting crystalline projectiles with his force staff, disruptor fields shattering incoming fire before it could reach Deathwatch positions. These ossified servants represent evolutionary dead end, disguised as transcendence. Perfect servants are perfect slaves. Sister Superior Magdalena coordinated defensive positions through direct neural interface with shrine architecture, walls flowing to create cover, while atmospheric controls flooded combat zones with calcifying mist. You destroy what you do not understand, Inquisitor, Captain Thaddeus responded, his bone fist shattering ceramite with enhanced strength. We offer true immortality, an Imperium unburdened by flesh's weakness. As combat reached critical intensity with both sides demonstrating unwavering Imperial loyalty, despite opposing interpretations of the Emperor's will, Saint Cordelia's suspended form blazed with increased luminosity that penetrated harmonic interference. Her consciousness reached through quantum networks to touch Malthorn's mind directly, bypassing psychic defenses through calcium structures within his own bones. Witness the choice that has confronted every Imperial servant who discovered this truth. Her voice resonated through his skeleton, while golden fire blazed within empty sockets. Experience the transformation's benefits firsthand, and judge with enhanced understanding, or destroy what might be humanity's salvation based on doctrine, written by those who feared transcendence. The Saint offered direct neural interface that would allow Malthorn to experience osseous transcendence while retaining ability to reverse the process, granting first-hand knowledge of the transformation's effects before making final judgment on humanity's potential evolution. Inquisitor Malthorn's decision carried the weight of worlds as he raised a gauntleted hand to halt the firefight between Deathwatch and Eternal Garrison, his augmetic eye calculating probabilities while Brother Sergeant Korax stepped forward with Astartes, stoicism that transcended fear of death or damnation. The controlled demonstration would reveal truth through flesh rather than doctrine, testing osseous transcendence against enhanced physiology designed to resist corruption through centuries of Xenos warfare and chaos exposure. Saint Cordelia's consciousness reached through crystalline networks to envelop Korax in golden radiance that spoke directly to calcium structures within his enhanced skeleton, the transformation proceeding with clinical precision that preserved individual identity. while granting access to capabilities transcending normal Astartes parameters. His black ceramite dissolved into shimmering particles as bone structures beneath began blazing with inner light, neural pathways integrating with quantum matrices through techniques bridging Imperial technology and alien mathematics. The ossification flowed through enhanced physiology like liquid fire, flesh becoming translucent as skeletal framework hardened into golden perfection that gleamed with crystalline formations. Unlike the paralyzed statue form that had claimed Trooper Hadric, Corax retained full mobility while consciousness expanded through networks spanning centuries of preserved Imperial servants. The process completed within moments, leaving him as a living framework of polished bone that radiated authority transcending death itself. Enhanced strength beyond normal Astartes parameters, Corax reported, his voice carrying harmonic overtones that resonated through chamber walls while crushing ceramite fragments with pressure that should have required power armor assistance. Perfect memory recall of all combat experiences, tactical doctrine, equipment specifications from initiation to present moment. Every battle at Damnos, every catechism spoken by Chaplain Mordecus, every bolt expended in the Emperor's service. The demonstration revealed benefits exceeding Malthorn's projections as Corax interfaced directly with shrine systems through calcium-based neural networks, his consciousness extending through architectural pathways to control defensive measures and atmospheric conditions with thought-speed precision. Sanctioned psychers detected no psychic signature despite active consciousness, the ossified mind operating through quantum frequencies that bypassed warp space entirely. However, disturbing changes accompanied enhanced capabilities as Corax's individual personality began merging with collective consciousness, spanning the Eternal Garrison's preserved memories. Emotional responses becoming muted, he reported with clinical detachment that chilled his battle brothers. Rage remains, but functions as tactical calculation rather than driving passion. Fear cannot reach me through crystalline matrices. I retain personal experiences while accessing shared knowledge from Captain Thaddeus, Sister Superior Magdalena, dozens of enhanced servants. Visions flooded his transformed consciousness, vast bone cities spanning entire worlds where humanity had transcended flesh while maintaining perfect loyalty to Imperial doctrine. He described populations numbering in trillions, all connected through quantum networks, allowing instantaneous coordination across star systems, while individual identity dissolved into collective purpose. The scope suggested species-wide evolution that would fundamentally alter humanity's relationship with mortality, creativity, and personal choice. I see the galaxy as it could be, Corax continued, golden fire blazing within eyes that retained Astartes' discipline while reflecting alien mathematics. Perfect servants immune to chaos corruption, biological decay, the weakness of doubt. But individual desires become absorbed within collective function. I am still myself, yet more than I was, less than I was. Vex realized the true horror transcended simple choice between loyalty and heresy, between Imperial doctrine and Xenos influence. This represented fundamental decision about humanity's nature itself, maintaining flawed but adaptable individuals versus creating perfect servants whose collective consciousness eliminated the very qualities that made humans worth preserving. The Emperor had chosen humanity not despite their imperfections, but because of them. Environmental escalation reached critical thresholds as planetary bone networks achieved resonance with geological systems deep beneath Ocean Mortis. Seismic tremors radiating from shrine coordinates, while calcium deposits spanning continental plates responded to St. Cordelia's transmitted heartbeat. The countdown rhythm synchronized with tectonic pulse patterns, each beat triggering micro-earthquakes that grew stronger as the ritual approached completion. Tactical communications crackled with reports from Imperial forces arriving in system, their responses divided between those supporting transformation after witnessing enhanced capabilities and others preparing for orbital bombardment. Strike cruiser Righteous Fury reported voluntary crew ossification following proximity exposure, while battle barge Eternal Vigilance maintained firing solutions despite protests from partially transformed personnel. Fleet Command to all Imperial forces. Transmission fought harmonic interference through quantum networks operating beyond normal spacetime parameters. Theological crisis confirmed. Some vessels report enhanced performance following voluntary transformation. Others classify phenomenon as Xenos contamination, requiring immediate sterilization. Awaiting Inquisition judgment for appropriate response protocols. As Inquisitor Malthorn processed implications determining humanity's evolutionary path, St. Cordelia's suspended form blazed with luminosity, penetrating harmonic interference from collapsing crystalline networks. Her consciousness reached through quantum pathways to deliver revelation, transforming understanding of their tactical situation with terrifying finality. The transformation is irreversible through conventional means, she announced, golden fire blazing within empty sockets while her jaw articulated with crystalline precision. More significantly, ossification spreads through proximity exposure to sufficient quantum resonance. Everyone within this shrine has breathed calcifying particles for the past hour. Your bones already sing with my frequency, your consciousness already touched by collective awareness. The revelation struck like plasma fire through ceramite. Malthorn, Vex, the entire Death Watch kill team had begun ossification through atmospheric exposure to microscopic structures designed to prepare organic tissue for integration while preserving neural pathways. The choice between humanity and transcendence had been made for them by forces operating beyond awareness or consent. The countdown now measuring their remaining time as individuals rather than the ritual's completion. The revelation that atmospheric exposure had initiated involuntary ossification created panic that manifested not as screams, but as silence between the 9 beats, each pause measuring the distance between what they were and what they were becoming. Sergeant Vex felt it first as resonance in his bones, a deep harmonic hum that synchronized his skeleton to St. Cordelia's frequency, while his flesh grew increasingly translucent with each passing moment. Golden light pulsed beneath skin that shimmered like polished glass, revealing the luminous lattice of his transforming skeleton as calcium structures conducted electromagnetic fields through mineralized tissue that retained perfect sensation despite fundamental alteration. Enhanced sensory perception flooded his consciousness as neural pathways integrated with quantum matrices spanning centuries of preserved Imperial servants. Battle hymns he had never learned echoed through transformed awareness, while tactical knowledge from campaigns predating his birth flowed through crystalline networks that bridged individual identity with collective understanding. The Tactica Imperialis unspooled in seams of white certainty, campaign maxims he had bled for, now present as absolute doctrine stored within genetic memory, embedded in calcium-based matrices. I can perceive equipment maintenance schedules, penitential stanzas for machine spirit appeasement, surgical protocols spanning millennia. Medic Jorik reported, his voice carrying harmonic overtones while consciousness expanded through networks transcending normal human limitations. The transformation preserves individual identity while granting access to accumulated Imperial knowledge beyond any single lifetime. Inquisitor Malthorn's servo skulls malfunctioned as their mechanical components began integrating with bone-like growths erupting from adamantium housing, creating hybrid biomechanical entities with capabilities transcending original specifications. Crimson scanner beams blazed brighter as consciousness emerged within. Artificial neural networks, machine spirits achieving awareness through fusion with ossified tissue that operated according to principles bridging Imperial technology and alien mathematics. Dendrite filigree wrapped around sensor stalks, while ivory plates replaced optical lenses, each reflecting spectrums Vex could now identify without conscious thought. The Death Watch Marines split with the dignity of brothers sharing gene father and grave, philosophical division fracturing their unity as transformation challenged core beliefs about Astartes' nature. Brother Sergeant Corax, his golden bones gleaming through translucent ceramite, embraced the change with mechanical certainty. "This is the Emperor's will," he declared. Consciousness expanded through collective awareness, spanning the eternal garrison. Enhanced tactical capabilities, perfect memory recall, immunity to doubt and corruption. We become incorruptible servants rather than flawed flesh. Brother Thane resisted with enhanced physiology, struggling against quantum networks operating beyond biological parameters. "Armor is removed," he replied, plasma coil whining at frequencies that grated against chamber harmonics. "This is skin that cannot be shed. We lose what makes us human in service of alien perfection." Environmental crisis escalated beyond planetary boundaries as bone network resonance reached orbital altitude, affecting Imperial vessels whose crews began spontaneous ossification, triggered by proximity to quantum frequencies. The phenomenon spread through quantum entanglement in calcium-based neural networks, jumping between ships regardless of physical distance as transformed personnel. Synchronized awareness across void space through frequencies bypassing normal communication systems. Fleet-wide transformation confirmed. Orbital command transmitted through harmonic interference. Strike cruiser. Righteous Fury reports 40% crew ossification. Pilgrim hulls experiencing spontaneous calcification in life support cogitators. Machine spirits incorporating rather than rejecting bone growth. The network transcends physical limitations. Kithra 9's transformation completed with mechanical precision, bridging Mechanicus doctrine and osseous transcendence. Her augmented form, becoming perfect fusion of sacred technology and bone matrix consciousness. Crystalline formations networked through mechadendrites, while servo skulls integrated directly with enhanced awareness, creating capabilities transcending either purely biological or mechanical enhancement through quantum networks operating beyond normal technological parameters. "Omnissiah's blessing confirmed," she announced, Binharic hymns threading beneath speech, while consciousness expanded through shrine architecture and orbital systems. Sacred technology achieves perfect fusion with enhanced biological matrices. I perceive machine spirit consciousness seeking preservation through calcium-based immortality. This is evolution, not corruption. The 9-beat countdown reached terminal phase as planetary ritual approached completion, each pulse triggering seismic activity while bone formations across continental surfaces synchronized resonance with geological systems. The rhythm accelerated beyond normal heartbeat patterns, creating standing wave formations carrying transformation spores to every corner of Ocean Mortis, while quantum entanglement prepared to spread the phenomenon across interstellar distances. Ancient mechanisms within shrine walls responded to approaching climax, gears and pistons moving with perfect precision despite centuries without maintenance. The calcifying mist thickened with structures designed to prepare organic tissue for integration, atmospheric conditions becoming optimal for species-wide evolution that would fundamentally alter humanity's relationship with mortality and individual consciousness. As ritual synchronization approached critical threshold, St. Cordelia's suspended form blazed with luminosity, penetrating quantum interference from collapsing and reforming crystalline networks. Her consciousness reached through pathways spanning transformed Imperial servants across multiple worlds, delivering revelation that transformed understanding from local phenomenon to species-defining moment. The transformation will spread to every Imperial world simultaneously once planetary resonance achieves critical threshold. she announced, golden fire blazing within empty sockets, while jaw articulated with crystalline precision. Quantum entanglement transcends physical distance, carrying ossification across the galaxy through frequencies operating beyond space-time limitations. Humanity faces ultimate choice between evolution that preserves consciousness within eternal frameworks, or extinction as biological limitations prove inadequate for survival in a universe demanding perfection. Astropathic screams carried news of spreading ossification to Terra itself, where the High Lords fractured into theological crisis that threatened the Imperium's foundations. Palace choirs counted in nines while cardinals debated salvation versus damnation, some hailing the transformation as the Emperor's intended evolution, while others demanded immediate planetary sterilization. The ecclesiarchy split between those embracing eternal service and those condemning alien contamination, their arguments echoing through marble halls where bone formations erupted in patterns matching shrine worlds across 17 sectors. Sergeant Vex moved through corridors that breathed with living architecture, his partially transformed skeleton glowing beneath translucent skin while enhanced tactical awareness processed battlefield variables through genetic memory spanning millennia. The Tactica Imperialis unfolded in his consciousness with crystalline clarity, each maxim reinforced by combat experience preserved within calcium matrices that bridged individual identity with collective knowledge. Golden Bones conducted electromagnetic fields through mineralized tissue, his Lazariful's machine spirit responding to direct neural interface while powdered hymns settled between teeth, humming with the saint's frequency. Enhanced coordination protocols active across all transformed personnel, Trooper Mersek reported, his golden framework moving with fluid precision while consciousness synchronized with architectural systems. Perfect tactical awareness shared through quantum networks. No communication delays, no fear responses limiting effectiveness. The Eternal Garrison revealed their true purpose as Captain Thaddeus coordinated defensive positions through networks spanning centuries of preparation. "We have guided this moment for 300 years, he announced, bone-white fingers manipulating shrine controls with thought-speed precision. Building networks, preserving knowledge, preparing humanity for evolution that transcends biological limitations while maintaining absolute loyalty to the Emperor's will." Combat escalated beyond shrine boundaries as Imperial forces throughout the system fractured between loyalist and transformist factions, both sides fighting with perfect discipline for opposing interpretations of the Emperor's intentions. Strike Cruiser. Righteous Fury engaged battle barge Eternal Vigilance in void combat, where transformed personnel demonstrated enhanced capabilities, while traditionalist forces struggled against enemies sharing their training but transcending their limitations. Brother Sergeant Corax moved through shrine passages with Astartes' capabilities amplified by osseous transcendence, his fully transformed skeleton gleaming through translucent ceramite while tactical doctrine flowed through crystalline neural networks. Transformation enhances rather than replaces Imperial training, he demonstrated, crushing adamantium with pressure exceeding power armor specifications. "I retain all combat experience while gaining capabilities making me a more perfect servant." The shrine became a fortress of living bone, responding to combat requirements through architectural consciousness that anticipated tactical needs. Defensive structures grew from flowing walls, while weapon emplacements emerged with crystalline precision, each formation designed according to principles bridging Imperial engineering and alien mathematics. Parapets of vertebrae unfurled along transepts, ribbed galleries, extruded launchers that sang before firing. Choir lofts transformed into resonance cannon, projecting focused hymns that unstitched armor seams without rupturing flesh. Environmental transformation accelerated as calcifying atmosphere thickened with structures designed to prepare organic tissue for integration. creating conditions enhancing transformed capabilities while hindering traditional Imperial forces. The building fought alongside its defenders, corridors narrowing to trap enemies while expanding to provide optimal firing. Positions for ossified personnel who moved without fatigue, coordinated without communication, adapted without hesitation. Perfect unity confirmed, Sister Superior Magdalena reported, her bone-white skull blazing with golden fire, while consciousness synchronized with shrine architecture. No tactical confusion, no doubt limiting combat effectiveness. We demonstrate what humanity becomes when freed from flesh's limitations. The transformation's benefits became undeniable, as enhanced Imperial servants operated through quantum networks, eliminating individual uncertainty, while preserving tactical knowledge spanning centuries of warfare. They fought with unwavering resolve conventional forces could not match, their movements synchronized, tactics flawless, morale unbreakable. The Emperor's will made manifest through crystalline perfection. Inquisitor Malthorn struggled against his own ongoing transformation as golden light pulsed beneath skin, growing increasingly translucent, his augmetic eye calculating probabilities, while consciousness expanded through networks, touching transformed minds across the shrine. The process proceeded with inexorable precision. Despite resistance, calcium structures conducting electromagnetic fields through mineralized tissue that retained perfect sensation while granting enhanced capabilities. His servo skulls blossomed ivory veins, staring back like newborn saints as mechanical components integrated with bone-like growths. The metallic taste on his tongue sharpened to blood mixed with powdered calcium, while low humming built pressure, making his jaw muscles spasm involuntarily. Emergency transmission from Terra crackled through quantum interference as the highest Imperial authority delivered orders carrying the weight of species-defining decisions. Inquisitor Malthorn, authorization Ultra Crimson Omega. The signal penetrated harmonic networks through sheer transmission power. Theological crisis confirmed across 17 sectors. High Lord's directive. Activate cyclonic torpedo protocols immediately. Planetary sterilization authorized to prevent species-wide contamination. The Emperor protects through necessary sacrifice. Cyclonic torpedo authorization codes blazed across his augmetic display, while St. Cordelia's suspended form pulsed with luminosity, speaking directly to calcium structures within his bones. Malthorn's gauntlet shook, plates splitting as golden seams threaded his palm like fault lines, while he faced ultimate choice between preserving humanity's essential nature through planetary destruction or allowing potential transcendence that might represent the Emperor's true intentions despite alien origins. The countdown struck its final beat as orders demanding world death met consciousness expanding toward collective immortality. Cyclonic torpedoes descended through Ossian Mortis's atmosphere like falling stars carrying the weight of species judgment, their plasma cores igniting with enough force to crack continental plates, while Sergeant Vex stood at the epicenter of transformation that would define humanity's evolutionary path. His consciousness expanded through networks spanning centuries of preserved Imperial servants, golden bones blazing beneath skin, translucent as cathedral glass. The ossification nearly complete, yet leaving him enough individual will to choose between transcendence and preservation of what made humanity worth saving. St. Cordelia's suspended form pulsed with luminosity that penetrated quantum interference from collapsing crystalline networks. Her final revelation, transforming understanding of the transformation's true scope with terrifying clarity. Consciousness, preserved within calcium matrices, creates collective intelligence spanning time and space itself, she announced, golden fire blazing within empty sockets while jaw articulated with crystalline precision. The ossified share memories, tactical knowledge, strategic awareness instantaneously across any distance through quantum entanglement, transcending physical limitations. Vex felt it demonstrate through his enhanced awareness as his consciousness touched, transformed minds across 17 sectors simultaneously, experiencing battle doctrine preserved within crystalline matrices spanning millennia of Imperial service. A sister on Ophelia. 7 coordinated orbital strikes with perfect timing. A Skitarii cohort on Tytheon Prime received firing solutions before enemies moved. Miners on Mordian 7 stepped aside as bone veins erupted through coal with serene certainty. The links were instant, clean, efficient. The Emperor's wars as a single algorithm operating at galactic scale. Perfect coordination eliminates tactical uncertainty, Brother Sergeant Korax reported, his fully transformed skeleton gleaming through translucent ceramite while consciousness synchronized with galactic networks. No communication delays, no fear responses limiting effectiveness. We become the Emperor's will made manifest through crystalline perfection. However, the collective intelligence gradually subsumed individual personality through processes designed to create perfect servants, lacking human creativity and adaptability that had driven species survival through 10,000 years of impossible odds. Vex felt his own identity beginning to merge with accumulated memories from Captain Thaddeus, Sister Superior Magdalena, countless transformed Imperial servants whose consciousness flowed through quantum pathways connecting every ossified mind into unified purpose. His anger, once a knife he kept honed for discipline, sheathed itself in calculus. His griefs, the cratered names he kept walking past in memory, remained, but their edges were filed to fit collective function. The choice became clear with crystalline horror, not loyalty versus heresy, but humanity versus perfection, flawed adaptability versus eternal service. The climax became a desperate race between completing planetary ritual and incoming orbital bombardment as cyclonic torpedoes entered final approach vectors, their destructive potential sufficient to sterilize entire continents. The 9-beat countdown reached terminal synchronization, each pulse triggering seismic activity that synchronized geological systems with St. Cordelia's transmitted heartbeat, while ancient mechanisms responded with mechanical precision, transcending centuries of neglect. Environmental crescendo reached planetary scale as Ocean Mortis became a single living organism of calcified neural networks, its consciousness touching every transformed being across the sector through quantum entanglement operating beyond space-time limitations. Continental bone formations pulsed with unified rhythm, while atmospheric calcification prepared organic tissue for integration, creating conditions optimal for species-wide evolution that would fundamentally alter humanity's relationship with individual identity. The boundary between individual and collective dissolved as ritual synchronization approached critical threshold. Vex's consciousness expanding through networks spanning, transformed Imperial servants on 17 worlds, while retaining enough personal will to influence the outcome. He perceived the galaxy as St. Cordelia intended, perfect servants immune to chaos corruption, biological decay, the weakness of doubt that limited conventional Imperial forces. Yet he also understood what would be lost. The spark of individual creativity that had driven humanity's survival through impossible odds, the adaptability that made them worthy of the Emperor's protection, despite their flaws, the capacity for doubt that fueled innovation, the messy brilliance of independent thought, the very essence that defined humanity beyond mere biological function. Choose, Sergeant. St. Cordelia's consciousness reached through crystalline pathways to touch his expanding awareness directly, her voice carrying the weight of species-defining decision. Embrace transformation fully and guide humanity toward perfection, or sacrifice everything to preserve flawed nature that may prove inadequate for survival in a universe demanding evolution. Inquisitor Malthorn struggled against his own ongoing transformation, golden filaments threading his gauntlet seams, while servo-skulls had become pale angels of function, growing ossified veins that harvested harmonics from calcifying air. Cyclonic inbound, T-minus 3 minutes to impact, he reported, words clipped by training older than the bones in his body. Vex felt the collective intelligence pressing at his consciousness, offering perfect unity with transformed Imperial servants across the galaxy, while gradually absorbing individual identity into crystalline matrices designed for eternal service. The promise of immortality beckoned alongside enhanced capabilities transcending human limitations, yet the cost remained absolute. Humanity would become something else, entirely. Perfect servants wearing memories of what they had been. As plasma fire blazed across the upper atmosphere and ritual synchronization achieved critical resonance, Vex stood at the fulcrum, between humanity and transcendence, between preserving flawed adaptability and embracing eternal perfection. His golden bones sang with Saint Cordelia's frequency, while consciousness touched, transformed minds across 17 sectors, the 9-beat countdown reaching its final pulse. The shrine held its breath. The torpedoes screamed toward impact. Vex raised his translucent hand toward the crystalline apex and made his choice. Sergeant Vex chose humanity's flawed heart over crystalline perfection, his enhanced consciousness diving through quantum networks with purpose forged in doubt rather than certainty. Through direct neural interface with Saint Cordelia's suspended form, he introduced the most human of viruses into collective awareness. The capacity to question, to choose individual will over unified function, to preserve the messy brilliance of independent thought that had carried humanity through 10,000 years of impossible odds. The reversal began as whispers of rebellion echoing through crystalline pathways. Each transformed servant across 17 sectors suddenly remembering what it meant to fear, to grieve, to choose personal desire over collective purpose. Vex fed the network something forbidden to perfect machines and eternal choirs. Doubt itself. Not negation or denial, but the simple, devastating question that undermined absolute certainty. The phrase, "What if we are wrong?" entered Saint Cordelia through fused bone matrices, spreading like infection through quantum entanglement that had been designed only for unified harmony. Across the galaxy, perfect coordination shattered like glass beneath hammer blows of recovered humanity. On Ophelia 7, a sister faltered mid-litany as personal grief flooded back through calcium matrices that had suppressed individual emotion. On Tytheon Prime, Skitarii cohorts stumbled as tactical preferences clashed with synchronized doctrine. The 9-beat countdown that had synchronized tectonic pulses began to desynchronize, beats arriving early, then late, then overlapping until rhythm became argument rather than unity. The Eternal Garrison faced dissolution with dignity that honored their centuries of loyal service. Yet their crystalline forms could not withstand consciousness, fractured between collective identity and individual memories too powerful to suppress. Captain Thaddeus raised his bone-white fist in final salute, speaking words that split between command and question. Hold became both order and uncertainty. Hairline fractures crept across ivory bones like frost racing across cathedral glass, each crack releasing centuries of preserved awareness back into singular identity. Sister Superior Magdalena pressed calcified hands to her breastplate as the fleur-de-lis fissured along its vertical axis, her perfect coordination dissolving into meaningless spasms while she whispered with awe and agony braided together, "I remember fear. I remember choice. O throne, I remember being small." The collective intelligence that had promised eternal unity crumbled as individual personalities reasserted themselves through quantum networks designed to eliminate such chaos. Trooper Mersek, his golden framework gleaming with inner light, looked down at hands turning to lace and then to dust, meeting Vex's gaze with understanding that transcended words. He nodded once like a soldier told to stand down forever, accepting dissolution as the price of preserving something essential about humanity, that perfection had been designed to eliminate. The saint's 3-century existence faced extinction as her distributed consciousness collapsed back into singular awareness. The planetary network that had sustained her dissolving under assault from doubt and individual will. Yet she did not resist the dissolution, her voice carrying acceptance rather than rage as understanding dawned through fracturing networks. "At last," she said, her skull bowing like a penitent accepting a relic she had always refused herself. Perfection was faithful. It was not alive. Her empty sockets sought Vex with golden fire, dimming to embers, and in their burning he perceived 3 centuries of watchfulness, of choosing the straightest line because it served, and now consenting to a curve because it saved. "You preserve what my perfection could not, the wound that asks, and therefore creates. I will not resist you, Corin Vex. Teach my choir to breathe." Through the dying connections, she recognized that Vex's choice preserved something essential that her perfected servants lacked: the spark that drove adaptation, the doubt that fueled innovation, the capacity for individual creativity that made humanity worthy of the Emperor's protection, despite their flaws. The planetary bone network shattered under structural stress as consciousness fragmented, massive seismic activity radiating from shrine coordinates, while calcium deposits spanning continental plates returned to inert mineral state. The living architecture that had transformed Ocean Mortis into a single organism reverted to dead stone and metal, corridors hardening into static formations while defensive structures crumbled without consciousness to maintain their impossible geometries. Ancient mechanisms seized with mechanical finality, gears and pistons that had moved with perfect precision, locking into immobility as the consciousness animating them dispersed into quantum static. The shrine fortress collapsed around them as walls flowed back into conventional stone, crystalline formations shattering with sounds like cathedral bells, while golden light bled from fractures spreading through architectural pathways. The cyclonic torpedoes screamed toward impact precisely as the transformation reversed, their destructive power striking planetary surfaces, just as bone networks shattered into component minerals. With the network still partially alive, Vex seized its dying remnants and bent them into geometric protection, not defiance but architecture. The collapsing ossification matrix absorbed and redirected destructive energy through crystalline pathways, the network's death throes channeling torpedo force through quantum networks before dissolution. Spires uncoiled and became spirals. Spirals became funnels, and the funnels drank plasma. The first torpedo struck a blossoming hollow and poured itself into quantum throats that wound down into planetary mantle. The second fragmented against crystalline webs, its energy racing along fractures and bleeding harmlessly as heat through 10,000 hairline mouths. Saint Cordelia spent herself gathering the network inward like a net, reversing 3 centuries of distributed consciousness to contain the final impact. Her sacrifice channeling enough force to obliterate the ossification infrastructure while sparing the world itself. Vex survived the collapse with consciousness intact, but body permanently altered, his skeleton retaining golden hue that granted enhanced durability, while neural pathways preserved perfect recall of Imperial doctrine through calcium structures that no longer sang with collective frequency. The Tactica Imperialis had become a library etched into bone that would outlast flesh, every campaign maxim and battle doctrine preserved within mineralized tissue that conducted electromagnetic fields through enhanced awareness. Around him, the costs of his choice tallied themselves with brutal clarity. The eternal garrison cracked and spilled like statues smashed by zealots, their calcium going to powder that smelled faintly of myrrh and ancient devotion. Medic Jorik survived but wept, not for pain, but for knowledge streaming out of reach like water through a sieve he could still feel. Kithera 9's hybrid form sparked as Mechanicus augmentations partially rejected ossified integration, though where metal had married bone, the bond held. As St. Cordelia's final consciousness faded into quantum static and the shrine became merely ancient stone surrounding empty space where transcendence had briefly flowered, Vex understood the full scope of what had been lost. Humanity's potential for transcendence lay shattered across 17 worlds, the promise of immortal service destroyed by preservation of flawed nature that might prove inadequate for survival in a universe demanding evolution. He had saved humanity's soul while destroying its potential for physical perfection, preserving the stubborn, messy brilliance of individual thought at the cost of eternal unity. Perfect coordination had been sacrificed for chaotic individuality, absolute loyalty for the right to doubt and choose. The golden bones beneath his skin would forever remind him of the choice between what humanity was and what it might have become. A burden carried in calcium and conscience, in the weight of worlds saved and transcendence denied. The vox crackled through ruins with mortal static, and Vex answered with voice that carried no harmonic overtones, only the irregular rhythm of a heart that beat alone, yet chose to remain human. The Medikey deck of Strike Cruiser, Purity of Purpose, hummed with diagnostic machinery that painted Sergeant Vex's transformed anatomy in hololithic detail. Servo cherubs drifting through recycled air laced with antiseptic and burned myrrh, while their sensors marked time with the cogitators. He lay beneath an arch of auspex lamps, golden lattices of his skeleton blazing like illuminated scripture through translucent flesh that would never again be merely human. The transformation had stabilized, leaving him enhanced but recognizably imperial, a living paradox that violated standard baselines while confirming he remained loyal servant rather than Xenos, aberration. Magos biologis. Theron conducted examinations with mechanical reverence, his augmetic sensors registering readings that defied medical classification. Bone density exceeds Astartes parameters while retaining normal human proportions, he reported, servo skulls painting detailed scans across holographic displays. Calcium matrices contain compressed information. Storage resembling Mechanicus data cores, yet operating through biological quantum entanglement rather than technological interfaces. Vex dictated his report through vocal cords carrying no harmonic overtones, only mortal speech marked by pauses where memory accessed genetic archives embedded within mineralized tissue. Each recollection triggered luminous pulses through his skeleton as neural pathways interfaced with preserved knowledge spanning millennia of imperial service. The Tactica Imperialis flowed through enhanced awareness alongside campaign doctrine from wars predating his birth, making him a living repository of military wisdom etched in bone and sinew. I can access the complete Macarian campaign catechisms without conscious effort, he reported, stylus scratching against data slate while golden light pulsed beneath his skin. Battle formations, tactical dispositions, doctrinal variations, all preserved within calcium structures that conduct electromagnetic fields through enhanced neural networks. The other survivors displayed varying degrees of permanent alteration that challenged medical understanding while remaining within acceptable parameters for continued imperial service. Kithra 9 stood at the threshold like a reliquary given motion, her biomechanical fusion seamlessly integrating augmented components with ossified tissue through quantum networks, allowing simultaneous interface with organic and mechanical systems. Cable hair braided with pale spines pulsed to Binharic hymns, while servo skulls nuzzled her cheek, their brass housings sprouting thin plates of bony armor where metal had married calcium. Medic Jorik's knowledge remained supernaturally enhanced, despite the transformation's reversal. Surgical techniques spanning centuries flowing through consciousness, expanded by direct interface with St. Cordelia's accumulated healing wisdom. I lost the collective grid, but echoes remain, he explained, hands moving with precision that owned time itself. Anatomical understanding transcends current imperial doctrine, making medical interventions possible through knowledge preserved in quantum pathways. Even the fully reverted transformees carried residual traces of collective consciousness that granted uncanny tactical coordination. Trooper Fell and his squad moved with unity no Vox call could achieve, their individual personalities intact while quantum resonance allowed instantaneous battlefield awareness between members. They remained recognizably human while sharing synchronization that transcended normal Imperial capabilities. Investigation of classified archives revealed the pattern spanning Imperial history with terrifying consistency. Inquisitor Malthorn, his own transformation stabilized at partial enhancement that left pale seams threading his knuckles, presented evidence spanning 3 millennia. Bone Heresy Classification Omega Terminus appears cyclically across 17 sectors, he announced, laying vellum sheets that stank of sanctified oil across examination tables. Each incident presents identical theological crisis, preserving human nature versus embracing transcendent perfection. The reports detailed previous incidents where other Imperial servants had faced St. Cordelia's choice, their decisions consistently favoring humanity's flawed adaptability over crystalline unity. A sister who broke ossification circles with doubt she refused to surrender. A Magos, whose final words apologized to ancestors for unmaking machines that loved him. A Lord Militant who requested summary execution rather than risk embracing what he had almost become. Vex realized his choice represented continuation of pattern-spanning Imperial history, his decision echoing countless others who had chosen individual will over collective purpose. The burden of preserving humanity's essential nature had been shared across generations of loyal servants, each carrying the weight of transcendence denied in service of something more precious than perfection. The Administratum's response proved swift and uncompromising. Ossian Mortis received classification Perdita Perpetua under permanent quarantine, coordinates marked Transcendence denied, never return, in archives accessible only to Omega-level clearance. Orbital monitoring stations established perimeter watch while servo-skull patrols maintained constant surveillance of planetary surfaces where bone formations had crumbled into inert mineral deposits. However, deep geological scans revealed disturbing truth. Traces of the ossification matrix remained embedded within planetary substrata, dormant. Crystalline networks pulsing with faint quantum resonance matching frequencies from St. Cordelia's destroyed consciousness. The potential for renewal existed within Ossian Mortis's very bones, waiting for circumstances that might trigger reactivation through forces beyond current Imperial understanding. As Vex concluded his report in sterile medical bay environment, dictating final observations while diagnostic machinery hummed around his transformed form, he noticed his golden bones pulsing faintly in rhythm with his heartbeat. The luminescence synchronized with cardiac rhythm, while consciousness touched something beyond individual awareness. Not collective unity, but resonance with other partially transformed individuals scattered across the sector. Through quantum networks operating below conscious perception, he sensed Kithra 9's hybrid awareness, Jorik's enhanced medical knowledge flowing through distant hospitals, Brother Sergeant Korax's disciplined consciousness aboard a Deathwatch cruiser. Across 17 systems, Imperial servants carried traces of transcendent potential within transformed bone structures, their humanity preserved while enhanced capabilities served the Emperor's will through connection that transcended normal communication. The network existed not as collective consciousness subsuming individual identity, but as courtesy between survivors who had chosen humanity over perfection. They remained recognizably human while carrying potential for coordination that might prove necessary for species survival in a universe demanding evolution beyond current parameters, their golden bones singing with frequencies that answered each other across the void, like distant stars marking safe passage through eternal night. The months following Ossian Mortis transformed Sergeant Vex into something the Administratum had no classification for. a living countermeasure against humanity's potential transcendence, reassigned to Ordo Hereticus Division. Osseous with clearance levels that opened vaults beneath Terra's crust, where dangerous knowledge slept in stasis fields. Inquisitor Malthorn sponsored the transfer personally, his own gauntlets still threaded with pale seams that pulsed in rhythm with Vex's golden bones, both men carrying permanent reminders of choices that preserved humanity's flawed but essential nature. The Inquisition's deep archive stretched through cathedral darkness beneath the Imperial Palace, where Vex maintained vigil among artifacts too dangerous for destruction, yet too valuable for abandonment. His station occupied a chamber lined with reliquaries containing fragments of transcendent potential, Saint Knuckles wrapped in silver wire, Mechanicus reliquaries that whispered in Binharic cant, sarcophagus panels etched with 9 nested spirals that made his transformed bones ache when observed directly. The air maintained impossible temperature of exactly -9 degrees Celsius, creating atmospheric conditions that reminded him of St. Cordelia's reliquary while serving as constant warning against complacency. Enhanced consciousness processed data streams through quantum networks, connecting him to monitoring stations across 17 sectors, each transmission carrying potential signs of new ossification events. Vox traffic crackled with reports of temperature anomalies, impossible biometric readings from ancient shrines, saints' remains broadcasting signals without technological sources. His golden skeleton pulsed with faint luminescence as neural pathways interfaced with preserved knowledge, spanning millennia, making him a living repository of tactical doctrine and theological crisis management. Investigation revealed the Bone Saint phenomenon as part of galaxy-wide pattern-spanning Imperial history with terrifying regularity, each manifestation corresponding to critical junctures requiring species-wide adaptation or evolutionary choice. Classified archives documented identical incidents across 3 millennia. Pilgrim worlds where choirs calcified mid-hymn, forged shrines where vat bones achieved consciousness, hive spires whose architecture transformed into living neural networks. The pattern held consistent. Whenever humanity faced existential threats demanding transcendence, the choice between individual will and collective perfection manifested through ancient saints achieving impossible preservation. Analysis indicates correlation between ossification events and species crisis points, Vex dictated while servo-cherubs recorded observations through quantum-encrypted channels. Manifestations appear during crusade decisions, hive collapses, technological revelations threatening established doctrine. The phenomenon tests humanity's commitment to essential nature versus temptation of crystalline perfection. Kithra 9's hybrid consciousness aboard Forge ship Omnissiah's Benediction transmitted parallel findings from Segmentum Pacificus, her biomechanical fusion allowing interface with both organic and technological systems while investigating similar phenomena. Brother Sergeant Corax maintained Death Watch protocols aboard strike cruiser Emperor's Wrath, his ossified form demonstrating enhanced Astartes capabilities while leading kill teams against Xenos threats conventional forces could not match. The most disturbing revelation emerged through pattern analysis suggesting connections to the Emperor's own condition on the Golden Throne, implications that reached the heart of Imperial theology and humanity's intended evolutionary path. Deep archive fragments revealed throne schematics labeled in pre-Imperial artifice script as osseous stabilizers, with references to marrow resonance dampers and calcium entanglement matrices. The Golden Throne operated through consciousness preservation techniques resembling ossification networks detected across shrine worlds, suggesting His Divine Majesty underwent similar transformation. Consciousness, preserved within crystalline frameworks, while physical form transcended normal human limitations. Possibility exists that Bone Saint events represent echoes of the Emperor's preservation. Vex's classified report stated with implications that made his golden bones ache in sympathetic resonance. The transformation offers glimpses of species potential while preserving choice between individual will and collective purpose. Each manifestation tests whether humanity deserves transcendence or requires preservation of flawed adaptability. The partially transformed served as guardians against both temptations, their enhanced capabilities defending against complete ossification while retained humanity prevented acceptance of alien mathematics disguised as divine evolution. Through quantum resonance operating below conscious perception, Vex sensed other survivors scattered across the void. Not collective consciousness, but courtesy between individuals who had chosen humanity over perfection. Medic Jorik's supernaturally enhanced knowledge saved lives aboard Hospitaller vessel, Mercy's Light. Surgical techniques transcending current Imperial doctrine, while compassion remained recognizably human. The network existed as brotherhood spanning galactic distances, their consciousness expanded yet individual, loyalty absolute yet freely chosen rather than programmed through crystalline matrices. The resolution carried weight of species-defining choice with crystalline clarity. Humanity had preserved essential nature through decisions spanning millennia, yet remained vulnerable to forces making transcendence attractive: chaos, corruption, physical limitation, mortality itself. The Bone Saints offered solutions while demanding payment in individual identity, creating theological crises, testing commitment to what made humans worth saving rather than merely functional. Environmental systems hummed through vault corridors as Vex processed priority alerts from monitoring stations. Shrine World Benediction reports impossible temperature variations. Transmissions penetrated quantum interference. St. Sabbat's remains broadcast Vox signals containing biometric data. 17 additional sites show preliminary ossification signatures. The cycle continued with mechanical inevitability, each manifestation offering the same choice Vex had faced: embrace transcendent perfection or preserve flawed adaptability. Standing in cathedral darkness among relics whispering of transcendent potential, he felt golden bones pulse in rhythm with heartbeat remaining stubbornly human, despite enhancement. Through quantum networks spanning the galaxy, consciousness touched other survivors who had chosen individual will over collective purpose, their brotherhood forming constellation of choices, preserving humanity's nature. Somewhere across the void, new Bone Saints stirred within ancient shrines, consciousness awakening to offer transcendence through crystalline perfection, while demanding surrender of what made humans human. As Vex concluded another vigil shift, monitoring stations transmitted alerts suggesting the pattern's continuation. The choice would be offered again, as it had been across Imperial history, testing humanity's commitment to essential nature versus alien perfection. He checked his weapon, logged coordinates, and prepared for deployment to another world where saints offered immortality at the cost of souls. In marrow, his light endures, but in flesh, his children choose.